Hello everyone and welcome to KAFTAN Television, and for those of you who are just joining us, this is Daybreak Africa. And for the topic of today, we're talking about the reopening of the Warri refineries. Warri Oil Refinery, after almost a decade of shutdowns, resumed some operations. The government has promised to revive its moribund refineries, which have been hit by years of neglect, damage, and accusations of mismanagement. The 125,000 barrel per day refinery, whose closure in 2015 was blamed on despair and crude shortages, was now running at a 60% capacity, according to a statement signed by presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga. For state-owned refineries with a combined capacity of 445,000 barrel per day, the 110,000 barrel per day Kaduna plant in the north and 3 units on the oil-rich Niger Delta, including Warri, have been closed for years. And joining us for today's discussion is Uchenna, Alphonsus, a public affairs analyst. It's nice to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
A happy New Year, sir.
I wish you the same.
Thank you for joining us, and now
it's my
say
pleasure.
Happy New Year to you.
I wish you the same. Yeah.
Well, it's quite news. I mean, we heard about this reopening recently, and after that of Port Harcourt refinery, which was opened sometime in December. Now it's almost a decade since our refineries have been shut down, and now seeing them revived, you know, back to life, and saying that production is about to kickstart. What do you feel about the oil market now?
It's a very good ideal for the reopening, and I so much believe it's going to go a very long way to boost the economy of our country, Nigeria. Aside that, because I so much believe on this fact, anything that is working, or probably anything that happens and it stops working, or in case of any problem, it's always good we have to look into the factors militating against the stoppage in the first place. Although it has been actually said, the presidential spokesman has actually outlined some of the factors that make them stop work, which cuts across this mismanagement, which for me it's very, very good. But the aspect we will shy against is the issue of holding the shortage of crude oil to it. That is not a factor. It's not really a factor, because if they're actually saying it's a factor, that means they're actually the main constitutive agent. We have the crude oil. God has been so wonderful to us here in Nigeria that He really blessed us with crude oil. But do not forget what is happening to our crude oil. Now the idea is now our crude oil is now being sold, all in the name that our refineries there in the country have stopped working. So they sold it out to be refined
and then imported back to the country.
And bring back to the country. It's a very big problem. It's a big shame. In fact, I actually say it's a mismanagement in the highest order. Because looking at it, like I always like to simplify facts adjust to it.
Yes.
You are actually known to be a producer of a particular commodity. You are blessed with the raw materials that are directed towards such production of that commodity. But all you could do is what? Those raw materials that you have in excess, you sold them out to another person. Such a person produces the same commodity and decided to sell back to you in its finished product. Does it really make sense? It doesn't make sense. It is quite ridiculous. In the sense that what? The one who is selling back to you the finished product, before such person decides his or her own cost of production, he will put into it to factor in the amount being given to you to purchase the raw materials. And you see that this is against what we call circular flow of income. And that is why most often when it comes to any issue that has to do with production, because of course the refinery issue is also a productive, it's an extractive sector of a productive activity in the country, which means that what we are supposed to go by a principle, we call it comparative cost advantage. This is a principle embedded in what we call international trade that is all well known to all countries. And which happens to do what? That a country is expected to embark on the production whereby she uses what? A lesser cost of production. What I'm actually saying in essence, let me pick a commodity. This is a Punch newspaper. I am a producer of Punch newspaper as a country A, and you are a producer of the same product as a country B. Now, we are more or less, it's a competitive market.
Yeah.
But the fact remains that we don't just have to make it competitive. We should consider the consumers who are actually benefiting from such products. Then comparative cost advantage is of the opinion that you as a producer try as much as possible to ascertain the costs, the financial implication for the production of your own products, and I should do mine. If mine is lesser, you should leave me alone to produce such a commodity. And you sort out another product or commodity whereby it uses a lesser cost of production. By this way, it makes the country at ease. But look at in the case of our oil sector, whereby Nigeria is one of the oil producing country, we have the crude oil. Then what we need to do is what? Is to sell out our crude oil. All in the name that our refineries are no longer working.
Yeah.
So they refined this crude oil in a foreign land and they sell back to us. What are we saying? It becomes a problem. And that is attributed to most of this economic hardship that we are experiencing. Devaluation of our naira is also a byproduct of this menace. And there's what called balance of payment, BOP, which has to do with what? That an ideal country is expected to have more exports than imports. Or probably there should be a kind of equilibrium. Or a country that is said to be flourishing is supposed to have what? More exports than imported goods. And that is why most often you see some of our leaders, our part leaders, who comes up with this policy trying to direct it towards reducing the imported goods into country, then focusing more on what our locally made goods. These are issues that will drive our economy to a boost.
Well, recently, that was at the point where Dangote Refinery came on board. There was an issue with NNPC supplying the company at the time, saying the crude oil was not enough.
Yeah, sure.
And now, knowing that we have these 2 other additional refineries supplying them, do you see any feasibility? Because we now have to import crude oil again.
Yeah.
Saying it is not, the one we have is not even sufficient.
It's not even sufficient. Of course, if they are saying it's not sufficient, I know they are very much aware about that it's not sufficient. But the problem actually started from them. And you know one thing about political leaders, the fact is that these days I find it difficult to show more concern to whatever they say. They are, I would say, not hiding words or not trying to hide under pretense. I would say they are gallant liars. Now, I was one of those people who has this idea that, wow, if Dangote Refinery starts working, it's going to be a kudos on us, because there's going to be a serious lesser concentration on importing food to our country. So that means it will bring about a balance of payment. Then I was expecting to see dollar crashing. There are a lot of attributes embedded in this factor of Dangote Refinery, but it was a shock when I discovered the reverse is the case. And that's why I was telling a friend of mine, I said, anything that has to do with Dangote Refinery is political. And that's just the fact.
Do you have any facts to back up the claim?
Of course it is political. Look at the point of commencement, Dangote could not decide to what? The price. And he said it emphatically. Now he is waiting for NNPC to decide that. Does it really make sense? To me, it doesn't make sense. This is a free economy. You are the one producing. You know other factors to put in place to determine the price at which you sell out to the public. Why would NNPC be deciding for you? Don't you think it's political now? It is. It is. To my greatest surprise, I wouldn't know how factual that it is, but the news is everywhere. That even Dangote exporting to other countries, his product has been exported at a lesser price than that of the one sold here in the country. I'm still trying to figure out if it is factual or not. But Nigeria, anything can happen. They say it's a game of football. Anything can happen. But if that is the case, the truth is that if we have our own refinery, then it should be at a benefit of all the entire populace, the masses, economically. That should be the general idea. In fact, at the commencement of Dangote Refinery, I was thinking the price will really drop drastically. But it's not. Rather, it's even increasing. And who knows, there might be more increments. Though people are glamoring of a drop of how much. Can I even say that is a Startimes? I get me. I can't say that. I can't really say that. Although, seeing it in another way and also, Dangote Refinery, it is not a public enterprise. It's a private-owned business. Yeah. So the fact remains that what? Every focus of Dangote is just to maximize profit, which there is no fact about that. But even as such, there are measures government can put in place. It happens in other countries, whereby now, though the issue of subsidy might set in, though they said it has been removed, the issue of subsidy might set in, they're even giving Dangote a stipulated price of how much it will be sold to the entire populace. Then aside that, there should be a kind of roundtable discussion between the federal government and Dangote, and that is where subsidy will actually set in. Though I am one of those who says in Nigeria, subsidy removal is also a very giant corrupt practices in Nigeria, in practices actually. But I think that will be a way at which they can also see how it could be adjusted. Why? The general idea of all this is what? Is to reduce the pain, is to reduce hardship on Nigerians. That should be our focus.
You know, currently you heard from the president himself when he had the press talk where he outrightly mentioned that he is not going to change any of his policies and that we just have to bear with what we have.
Yes, of course. If actually I'm to be in his shoe, I will also make the same, not reversing some of his policies. They are fiscal policies. They are very sensible. Starting from fuel subsidy removal, it's a very good policy. In fact, during the reign of former President Goodluck Jonathan, I was one of those who actually give out kudos on that policy that has to do with fuel subsidy removal. Though all of a sudden, he's a very compassionate man that he shifted. He's not really as hard as our current president. He actually shifted ground. Then what happened? The payment started. But the fact remains that what? There are a lot of corrupt practices embedded in fuel subsidy removal. But the question is this: now that it has been removed, can we actually outline or identify the developmental strides that have been portrayed out of the removal? The answer is no. But do not forget that I said I applaud the removal of fuel subsidy. But the ways at which it was being implemented is faulty. It's faulty. We're in a democratic setting whereby we claim to practice a governance that has to do with what? A maximum benefit of the people. So it will be very wrong if you are inflicting pains on the people you are governing. Though there are times, they say Rome is not built in a day. We have to pass through some hardship. I'm not shy of the fact that we have to squeeze ourselves and go through the hardship so that later on we'll start smiling. But not in the case of Nigerian, whereby all our political leaders are corrupt men and women in the highest order. So that's where my fear is, that we're not going to look at these terrains, the removal, this and that, until our amiable president finishes his rule and somebody else come on and the problem will still persist. That is just my fear. But my area of concern is what? President Bola Ahmed Tinubu would have done us a lot of good by trying to put some measures in place before the sudden removal. And I so much believe at the point of pronouncement, probably weeks after, if they actually pay attention to the people, it should be humanly enough to say, oh, if I had known, I would have not done that. I would have taken my time to put some things in place. It happens in other countries. If you want to implement policies, you have to sit down, try as much as possible to evaluate the negative effects, envisage the likely negative effects that might happen as a result of this. Then at the end of the day, you try to see how you can make a cover-up, make a kind of adjustment, so that the inflation of the pains will not be much. And do not forget, we are in a country whereby prices of commodities can actually be determined by just anyhow. We are part of a free market economy. Mr. A can decide to sell this, Mr. B can decide to sell this owner. It's a different price. Nobody's going to query him. If you like, you buy. If you don't like, you don't buy. Look at the point of that pronouncement, look at what happened. There was a serious hyperinflation. Even goods that has nothing to do with fuel. Our poor mamas are in the market that sells vegetable. They actually planted and harvested vegetable at the back of their house, and they said they put in one. And what they did was to as well increase the price. So I think some measures will have been put in place before such a pronouncement. And if you look at every presidential aspirant, they also applaud, they also have that plan in mind.
Yeah, actually.
But the only concern is what the manner at which such implementation was done. And that's why it got to a point. There was a serious issue, economical issues in the country, even till today. The value of our money is falling. Things are very expensive. And there is no corresponding increments in workers' income. So it's a whole serious hardship. Then I'm talking about measures that would have been put in place. It would have been the fact that they would have even think on how, now that we are trying to increase the price of fuel, what can we do? Can we do something? Can we actually introduce or implement something that will serve as close substitute for fuel, that will even reduce the consumption? Thank God, most households these days have solar. If not, that what would have happened? So these are some substitutes that you would have done. I remember Jonathan then, actually, that was when the idea of free shuttle bus actually started to his students and probably their parents to transport them to their various schools. It's a very good idea, but it's not really enough. It is not really enough. But there are other measures that would have been taken in place. Now look at foreign countries that actually buy crude oil from us. And it must interest you that they have more crude oil than us. We are actually blessed with crude oil. Virtually all the raw materials used in this world, we're actually blessed with them. But look at the practice behind our crude oil. We are blessed with them. They buy from us. And they have more in stock than us. They even have the effrontery to refine and sell back to us, and they make a whole lot of money. And that is why when it comes to our foreign exchange earnings, it's very porous. And they still claim that they have more crude oil than the owner of crude oil. What really happened? They actually propelled and looked into some substitutes to those crude oil. And that is why when you look at their countries, most of their devices are being propelled or being powered by what? By solar. Even despite they have stable power supply. So if it would have been very better before the pronouncement by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if there was stable power supply, you and I will not even bother putting on our generators, generating centers in generators again. So in that way, that means the cost of or the financial implication behind you procuring fuel to do 1 or 2 services at home or probably in your business will go down. Such money can be diverted to another thing. But you still want to power your buildings, you want to power your refineries, your businesses, you want to power them because you have to eat, you have to sell. Then what happens at the end of the day, your net income is nothing to write home about. These are actually what we are calling the economic hardship that has befell on Nigerian citizens because of such a pronouncement. So that's just the basic.
So talking about the efforts made by our government, looking back at the reopened refinery, Warri Refinery, how do you assess the government's efforts to rehabilitate the country's aging refineries?
Yes, I would say that, like I told you, I applaud them because these are what we actually been longing to happen in the first place. I think, like I said in the first place, when I'm making reference to President Goodluck Jonathan, the idea of fuel subsidy removal is actually to what? To rehabilitate all our refineries.
Yeah.
What happened? Nothing happened. President Muhammadu Buhari, nothing happened as well. So there was information through the bridge around that, oh, this is working. They're not working. But now, I think it's an applaud for them. And I so much believe after the rehabilitation, they said it's 60% working. We are looking up to having a rating that has to do with what? 100% working. And the production per day of 125,000 barrels is a very good idea. So it's a very good idea because if you look at this, if the implementation is successful instead of what? They are able to meet with their 100% completion. You will see that what? But let me come to that side. Because there's one thing about Nigerians and our government mismanagement.
I was actually going to go there.
That's a factor on its own. Mismanagement in the highest order. And they are very good. When it's been mismanaged, you'll be the first person pointing accusing fingers on other factors. Now they just come up with shortage of crude oil. It's a big lie. But accept the fact that what? It stopped working because of mismanagement. Now that it has been reopened and their hands are on desk, there are a whole lot of benefit attached to it. Number one is this: employment opportunities that this will give to Nigerian youth. It's applaudable, of course. I am fond of telling people, whoever you find yourself and still be managing, please be grateful to God. Hold stick to that. And be at the peak of actually looking out for a better one. Because the rate of unemployment in Nigeria is a season film now. We don't know where it will end. We don't really know where it's going to end, when it's going to end. But I so much believe if production is being really reassessed as far as our country is concerned, it will be a very long way to reduce the rate of unemployment. And that's one of the reasons why in most of cases I applaud Peter Obi when giving his manifestos. He always eats on what? Production. Production. Our productivity in Nigeria is very low. But it will interest you, we consume the more. Even we consume more than those who produce. So if the refinery is working, of course, it will cut down on unemployment. As far as I'm concerned, foreign exchange earnings will also spike up. Well, so much believe we still have some countries, some African countries who are even looking up to us as far as exporting fuel, not crude oil this time around. In fact, I will buy with the fact of what the exportation of crude oil should be stopped. We really need it more. So it's an applaud for them, like I said in the first place. Looking at that, to reopen that is a very big applaud for them.
Anyways, talking about pipeline vandalism, which is actually very peculiar to that area, Warri area, what would you think will be, how do you think it's going to be a challenge probably in the process of implementation and actually achieving that set goal for the government?
You see, sometimes ago, I think years back, I've been fortunate to have a discussion on the issue of vandalizers in the riverine areas. If federal government can actually invite Boko Haram for a roundtable discussion An amnesty was granted, is being granted to them. What happened to these boys? They should pay. They should listen to them as well.
Okay. Shortly before we continue,
Okay.
let's go for a very short break, and then we'll be back to continue to discuss. We'll go for that shortly. When we get back, we'll delve into the second part of this particular discussion. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And still with us is Mr. Uchenna. And sir, you were talking about pipeline vandalism the other time before we went on a short break. Can you please explain more?
Like I said in the first place, I was actually trying to make reference to a discussions I was fortunate to be engaged on that centered on vandalizers of our pipeline. And I said this: if government had the effrontery to invite what do we call them? Boko Haram, and granted them amnesty, what happened to these people? They should be invited as well and pay attention to that cry. I so much believe they have a reason for doing such. That is one aside. Another aspect is this: I am saying this also, that the vandalization is also political. Now ask me why.
Yes, sir.
When they vandalize, what happened to the crude oil? Was it thrown away? It's been sold. Who are those buying? Why are they being refined? So that is the question that we should leave behind. So can you say it's political? Which means we still have some of our leaders who are enemies to the development of what? Of our dear country, Nigeria. Who are so selfish that still what? That induces this vandalization. And that is just a clear fact. If not, what will it take federal government of Nigeria to actually create a stoppage to that? Because that is also a very big factor that is really affecting us. Now, you just heard the spokesman to Mr. President who actually said, no, it's not the spokesman, Kyari, his recent visit to Warri.
Okay.
He mentioned that what one of the problems that actually militated against the existence of Warri Refinery was what? Shortage of crude oil. Do not forget, the same shortage is replicate to vandalization. So it's a very big issue which must be put into consideration. Now that there is a kind of rebirth on Warri Refinery, they should try as much as possible to create a serious evaluation. Now they have actually outlined the factors militating against the re-existence decades ago. Now they should try as much as possible to carry out a tax on how to stop the existence of those factors, which has to do with mismanagement, like we said. I hope they will be able to do that. Therefore, finalizers, they should call them, they know them. Because these boys are actually working for some of our leaders. They should call them for a round table, listen to their cry. If it is reasonable enough, amnesty should be granted to them. Though this is not the first time granting amnesty to them. I'm not encouraging them that they should do such. If they are true Nigerians, if they are patriotic enough, if they are a selfless Nigerian, they should stop it. They should stop it. And if they are willing to stop, it's not that if they are willing to stop, because I would so much believe that there are some factors that led to those devilish attitude of vandalization, and which is even cropped out with the poor performance of our leaders. Our leaders should do the needful. They should do the needful that is directed towards what? Development of what? Of Nigeria and Nigerians. If such is done, if there's employment opportunities for Nigerians youth, if there is stable economy, if there is stable power supply, there is nothing like hyperinflation, I don't think there should be any reason for all this. It will go a long way. Hardship that is being perpetrated by our leaders is also giving effrontery to these vandalizers, because they actually want to feed. Now, why I'm bringing in some of our leaders? Of course, it's not possible. A common man like me cannot just go there and say, okay, the pipeline, the crude oil you are stealing, come and set for me. I want to refine. No. No. We still have some big wins in government that is dealing with these guys. And those guys have no option than to fall for it because they want to survive. But just like I said, I'm not saying that's the best. That shouldn't be. But all I'm saying is what our leaders should do the needful. When the needful is done, I so much believe there will be reduction in these crime rates, especially in the issue of our pipeline vandalization. Then, if they have done the needful and it didn't stop, how many are they? How many are they that they cannot even get them to stop it? They can easily get them to stop it. It's quite very easy. It's quite very easy if they actually want to do it. Why so much believe there are ghost men in that sector that is frustrating every effort to stop those people. And that is if there is a legitimate effort to stop them. Well, but at this point in time, there should be, for the sake of our refineries.
You've been quite particular about the part of corruption in our political space, yeah, sure. Not just the oil, exactly in our political space. So if we have corruption as a major issue when it comes to implementation of any policy or economic issue, how do you think we can start to correct it? Do we begin, how would you say it is the citizens' responsibility now to begin to work towards redirecting corruption, or the leaders? And who amongst the leaders, if we actually have people who are now blocking the way, how do we begin to actually correct corruption in the system, if anything must move forward?
You see, I heard about someone who's made this statement, and seriously, he's not lying, that corruption, to stop corruption in Nigeria is going to be by miracle. And he now said, even himself, he didn't trust himself. That when he gets there, that's the way he said it in Yoruba language, which is making hips to himself. That's the same will happen. But the issue is, what has happened to corrupt practices in other countries? I'm not saying there's no corruption in other countries. There are corruptions also, but it's not as vast as far as it's where it is in Nigeria. Now, if you have to do a kind of comparison, the news is always everywhere. What do happen to political leaders in other countries who are corrupt? Though, despite the fact we have a very arm of government that we're actually looking up to also help stop corruption. But it's quite unfortunate. They are even the power, they are even the Spider-Man behind it. And that is why this is occurring and reoccurring. And I so much believe it will also continue to reoccur. But just like you have asked, ways or yardstick at which it can be not eliminated now, probably reduced.
Yeah.
Of course, it actually starts from you and I in our own various sectors. It's simple discipline.
But like you've mentioned, on the part of vandalism, where you were talking about these people who actually do this vandalism, you made mention of the fact that things are hard at the moment.
Of course, yes.
And this has pushed many people to even do things unthinkable that usually they ought not to do.
Of course, yes.
So if we are going to start from you and I and keep discipline, how do you think some people might be able to survive? I'm not trying to say people should go into this, but looking at the minds of
I'm still actually going there. I just want to start from the micro level that has to do with you and I in our own private sector, in our own small places, to actually instill discipline. It's called self-discipline. Is there. And this self-discipline also has to do with what? With our own choice of leadership when it comes to exercising our franchise rights. Either we like it or not, it is glaring. We can still manage to identify some of our leaders or political aspirants years back who doesn't have, who are not really too corrupt. I will use the word too corrupt.
Okay.
I get me. But the fact remains that what? Those who have an upper hand are the corrupt ones. And that is why the electoral process in Nigeria is being frustrated, that we don't even believe that electoral process will actually bring about choice of good leadership via exercising a franchise rights. Although you still going to say that this one is being attached to what? It's also being attached to the problem of hardship. You don't know what happened in this just concluded election. It's quite very obvious, it's glaring. People are ready to buy their vote, they're ready to sell their votes. And when they ask, I say, don't fucking care. It's no longer news, it's as if it's not as if it's a style. It's as if it's a tool that you have to use. For you to get there, you have to what? You have to buy people's votes. So when that happens, you want to step them not to be corrupt when they get there? Of course, they will definitely be corrupt. It goes back to starting from you and I. We see how some people. I remember that was about a particular years back. It was funny. And I was saying to myself, did I look like as if I'm hungry, or is that look as if I'm not learned enough that I have gone to vote somebody of my choice when coming down from the polling unit, and somebody is trying to say, oh, thank you, collecting this? For what? If this actually happened to a good number of us there, shying away from selling our votes, it's going to be an applaud. It's a starting point. Though I know it might not even lead to it. Because somebody said, even if I did not collect money, is INEC going to do any miracle? And that is just the truth. The only people that I know we can beg to really reduce the high rate of corruption is those who are actually in the judiciary arm of government. But the fact remains that what? It's not even like that again. They are now puppets for executive leaders. They are being controlled. The legislative arm of government, I'm saying it categorically, they don't even have a say any longer. Because ideally they should be what? They should be antagonists. But they are not. You see legislative arm of government praising executive for corruption, for embezzlement. I think other countries, they follow seriously and severely with past records before you can even be approved to contest. I know some of our leaders who has a very wavering records in the past. Why would they be allowed to contest? That's where the problem is. If we really know that we have good ones who are still God-fearing, who probably because of the fear of the poor masses, they can still do something. They don't really have a say, because those who are more corrupt will definitely have what it takes to find their way there. So you see that what I'm actually saying, that there are a lot of factors attributed to these corrupt practices by our leaders. And that is why I said it starts from us. After us, see, within the same us, it still has to do with what? Our electoral process. But that is even the worst.
Well, considering the part of investment in Nigeria, we know that since some sort of policies, even taxation came on board, and then we started seeing some investors leaving the country and all of that. So how do you think this new development can actually aid more foreign investment into the country?
Yeah, thank you very much. When it comes to investment in the country, and I know that is actually what we actually needed now. Even before I was born, I've often heard about stories of us in country having more foreign investors in this country than now. And even those foreign investors, when you ask them now, where are they? They have packed off. Now, number one thing we need to do is what? Which is very, very important. Taxation is still aside. It's not even the issue. Because every country that will survive will be subjected to getting tax from people. Number one is creating an enabling environment for foreign investors. And that is an area where our leaders has failed. And that's just the truth. Do we have an enabling environment till now? We don't have. If I will ask you, what are these enabling environments that will attract investors into our country? It's still the provision of this social infrastructure and basic amenities. One of it is what? Power. Our power sector is nothing to write home about. I tell you, if you have stable and reliable power supply, there will be more foreign investors in the country. Because the success or development of every productive industries is what is reflected to power. They needed power to run their sophisticated machineries. Now look at where their problem is. Look at how the country is being complicated. What has happened to power is nothing to write home about. We have epileptic power supply. Then what happened? What is the other close substitute to power? Fuel that we're talking about. What has happened to it? Increase in price. Then how do you want foreign investors to survive? Even infant industries, our local industries, how do you want them to survive? They will not survive. And those who strive to survive will do what? They will end up having much price attached to their commodities, thereby inflicting pains on the poor masses. And that's just the simple truth. So if actually our leaders want to encourage or entertain foreign investors into our country, they should provide an enabling environment. And these are the pointers of enabling environment: stable and reliable power supply, provision of basic amenities or social infrastructures like what? Good roads, good healthcare delivery system, good communication system. All these things would attract foreign investors. And that is just the basic. If our power sector, they are really doing well, if our health sector are doing well, if our education sector are doing well, if government has really provided some infrastructure like good roads, good water supply system, good transportation, good healthcare, foreign investors will definitely come in. They will definitely come in. And when they come in, of course, they are very much aware of the fact that what? From the profit they are realizing, they have to pay tax. It's a compulsory levy that each and every one of us has to pay, as much we are income earners in our country. They just have to pay. It's as simple as that. So I don't really see taxation is a factor whereby they will live. No. Taxation, imposing tax on them is not a factor. Of course, they are not enjoying most of these basic amenities. The fact that I'm not enjoying all this, I'm spending more to produce. At the same time, you're imposing much tax on me. If I'm not comfortable, I leave. And if I don't leave, that what happens to the prices of my commodity? The prices that will be attached to it to get to final consumers will be high. So it will make the whole system frustrated. So if our leaders really mean business, they really want foreign investors, they should do all this. They should do the needful by creating an enabling environment for all of them. And when it comes to our local producers, I remember that I was fortunate to say something about local producers in our country. We have youth who are, really good number of youth who are into productive activities now, trying to mix this together to start selling this. You have to also have to create an enabling environment for them. I can't remember when last government is giving out grants to potential investors as far as our country is concerned. There's what called tax holidays. There are also some environments, little tips that you can also do to enhance these infant industrialists, ranging from what? Giving them tax holidays. Probably for some time, for so year, do not pay tax until your business is booming. It will go a long way to help them. Even helping them market their goods is very important, because the production is said to be complete until goods get to the final consumer. And how does it get to the final consumer? Is the heads of all these amenities
being available
that will channel the movement of goods from their producers to final consumers. So all these things should be perfectly done. So that's just the fact about that.
Okay, moving away from the issue of corruption and what the government needs to do about this situation that Nigeria is presently facing. NNPC was credited for their restoration of the Warri Refinery. So what would you say is the important role of NNPC in the Nigeria energy future?
Yes, they are the one in charge of our oil sector, of course. They're actually the one in charge of the oil sector. And I will applaud, like I said in the first place, I will applaud the role they have played towards the resuscitation of Warri Refinery. But I will not stop there. They still have a lot to do. They still have a lot to do, even despite the fact that everybody in Nigeria, anything that has to do, any problem emanating from the egg sector, they always held them responsible. And the fact is, they should be held responsible. Sector like Central Bank of Nigeria, NNPC among others, shouldn't be political. Shouldn't be political. And this starts from human resources. This starts from human resources. I know there was a particular year, it was funny, not this present administration, because for this present administration, I will not shy away from the truth. I still applaud our president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in his words, in his rule of appointment into different sectors. He had actually succeeded in choosing some brilliant heads to manage some sectors, unlike some other administrations, whereby the appointment is always very, very phony. They have actually put what we call political patronage to the being, whereby somebody who is very vast into the agriculture. I'm just giving an instance, but it's actually that's what is happening, but not factual like it is. Like I'm saying, somebody is good in agriculture, for instance, ask him to come and come and become a minister for health. I don't know if you are getting what I'm trying to say.
Yes, sir.
You can see the 40 appointment. So that's why I say it has to do with what? The human resources that will be asked to oversee the affairs of our oil sector. I still believe NNPC officials, the appointment of NNPC officials is still very political. And I so much believe they know them. We have brilliant heads in the oil sector that should be appointed or selected to run the affairs of NNPC. And it will all go very well. Are you not surprised at times? It just started, it has happened before, but it came up again by Warri appointing himself as the Minister for Petroleum. So what has happened? Something is fishing. It shouldn't be. You have to oversee all these sectors. You should not directly put yourself as a minister for oil sector and for petroleum, bearing in mind that probably you really want to see what is happening there. You cannot see anything. There is nothing there you want to see. We still have good heads as far as country is concerned. We still have people who are God-fearing. We still have people who are patriotic. They know them. But such people would not be appointed, because such people will never allow them to actually lick the back of their hands.
Well, we are actually out of time, but I'd like you to answer this one question just before we leave in just a minute.
All right.
Now, when we talk about some of the solutions regarding the refineries and all, we are very familiar with the fact that most Nigerian industries tend to suffer with some worn out technological materials and all of that, which is actually one of the issues that came up with the stoppage of some of our Nigerian refineries.
Of course, yes.
So how can we go about remodernizing these industries, giving them the right equipment and all of that? And do you think the government is actually at that point where they actually can afford that now?
Yes. When it comes to the government being able to afford that, they can afford it. And that is why I said I should always clamor the fact that they should do the needful. They can afford it. And that's just the facts. They can afford the expectable modernization in the oil sector. And not just the oil sector alone. Even in our health sector. We have the money, they can do it. And if they cannot do it, I will advise them to borrow, because it's always ideal to borrow for productive activities. It's always good to borrow to finance projects, not to borrow to be giving out palliative. It's not sensible. But aside borrowing, I know they have everything it takes in terms of resources to improve modernization in all our sectors, especially the oil sector. Another thing I also had, a kind of solution, is this. We should learn how to focus much on diversification.
Okay.
For a very long time, we have actually subjected ourselves to the oil sector, shying away from the other oil sectors that are even rich. Agriculture is an aspect. And like that also. Because there has lately, for years long, there have been much concentration
on the oil sector.
And that is why we are at this point. And that's why they will have reason to say that we don't have enough crude oil any longer. But I know we have it. Don't mind it.
Well, thank you so much for joining the program this morning.
It
was really enlightening having you around. It has been an interesting episode so far on Daybreak Africa, and this is where we'll call it a close. See you again next time. Till we come your way, I am Angela Daku.
And I am Love Esrom.